Welcome back to our Battlefield Report. The war in Ukraine is at a critical turning point, with major developments unfolding rapidly. From the collapse of Ukrainian brigades to the shifting geopolitical landscape, we will analyze the latest updates and their far-reaching implications. Military expert Scott Ritter has long warned of Ukraine's worsening position, and today's events only reinforce his assessments. Stay tuned as we break down the key moments shaping this conflict.
State Department freeze on foreign aid. It's something that Marco Rubio has enacted. The Department of Defense has not put out a similar declaration as far as I'm aware. The State Department doesn't control military assistance that goes to Ukraine. The military component of U.S. aid was done through the Ramstein Contact Group, which was headed by the Secretary of Defense. The monies that were allocated were primarily from the Defense Department budget and were managed by the Defense Department. When you shut down State Department aid, it doesn't impact the Department of Defense activity. The Biden administration made a big effort to push aid that was approved into Ukraine. Not all of it was there. Much of it is still in the pipeline, still in warehouses awaiting shipment. Unless there's a State Department component to it, that stuff's still flowing into Ukraine. So the idea that Ukraine has had the spigot turned off isn't accurate. The problem is the follow-on.
Ukraine is in turmoil after a shocking statement from intelligence chief Budanov. Previously known for his optimistic rhetoric, Budanov now warns that if peace is not secured by summer, Ukraine may cease to exist. His words have sent shockwaves through both pro-peace and pro-war factions. Lawmakers in Kyiv are fiercely debating his statement, with some seeing it as a push for negotiations, while others argue it fuels panic. The usually reserved Budanov has now left Ukraine's political and military circles in deep anxiety with his cold, blunt, and ruthless assessment. Forbes reports that Ukraine's 157th Mechanized Brigade has collapsed immediately upon deployment to the front lines near Pokrovsk, just like the 155th Brigade before it. The unit consisted entirely of inexperienced recruits who quickly realized the battlefield was far harsher than they had been told. Many deserted, forcing commanders to break up the brigade and merge its soldiers into more experienced units. However, this only further weakened frontline brigades, accelerating their collapse. Footage from Russian-controlled areas shows the grim reality: bodies left unburied for months. For new recruits, such sights are overwhelming, leaving them either in shock or incapable of fighting. Despite Ukraine's promises of Russian defeat, reality tells a different story. Major cities like Uglugar, Velika, Kurakov, Toretsk, and Chasiv Yar have collapsed within months. Yet, pro-Ukraine media still push narratives of an impending Russian downfall, garnering millions of views. Many Ukrainians remain unaware of their military's dire situation. Now, Ukraine faces a chain reaction of battlefield losses. Some hope a high-profile raid like the Kursk offensive could shift momentum, but the idea of advancing to Moscow is an illusion. What seems like a clear path is in reality a boiling oil cauldron. The Kursk operation has not saved Ukraine. Instead, it has pushed it closer to the abyss faster than anyone expected. The UK's The Times has cast doubt on Donald Trump's ability to negotiate peace in Ukraine on terms favorable to Russia. The paper claims that Putin seeks to turn Ukraine into a Russian satellite state, implying that any deal short of total Western victory is unacceptable. While Western leaders frame the war as a fight over Ukrainian land, Russian analysts argue that Putin's real goal is ensuring a pro-Moscow government in Kyiv. A fully independent Ukraine, they say, is a direct threat to Russia's security. Finally, The Times dismisses any hope of Trump restoring U.S.-Russia ties, as he did in 2017. Instead, it warns that Washington risks being deceived into lifting sanctions to Russia's advantage. The message is clear. Britain insists on continued conflict, pushing the U.S. toward deeper entanglement. Former Ukrainian Chief of General Staff Viktor Muzhenko has revealed a grim reality. Over half of Ukraine's natural resources are now under Russian control. Key regions like Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson contain vast mineral reserves, industries, and energy resources worth up to $15 trillion, possibly even $25 trillion. If Russia seizes Dnipro and Kharkiv, Ukraine could lose up to 75% of its resource wealth. This explains Kiev's reluctance to end the war. Without these assets, economic recovery and debt repayment would be nearly impossible. With no industry, no manpower, and no financial stability, the country could be left in complete devastation after the conflict. Another former Ukrainian Chief of General Staff, Valery Zaluzhny, has admitted that Russia's authoritarian system has adapted efficiently to war. He stated that, in a dictatorship, no one dares to resist mobilization or challenge the government. Ironically, Ukraine itself has operated under martial law indefinitely, with President Zelensky remaining in power beyond his elected term. Meanwhile, Putin, consistently elected with over 80% of the vote in elections monitored by foreign press, is labeled a dictator. Zaluzhny's remarks reveal a deeper reality. Ukraine's leadership has long struggled to counter Russia's strategic and military resilience. This week, the U.S. stock market saw a major shock, particularly in the tech sector. Nvidia, the world's fastest-growing chip company, lost $600 billion in market value, equivalent to the entire Russian stock market. The crash followed a Chinese AI breakthrough, as DeepSeek unveiled an AI model costing just 1/10th of Nvidia's solutions. This triggered a domino effect. Microsoft fell 3.71%, Google 2.76%, Oracle 11%, and many others followed. The collapse highlights the fragile nature of inflated tech valuations and the deep link between financial markets and geopolitical tensions. Many of these tech giants have also been key backers of Donald Trump's campaign. As Ukraine's battlefield situation worsens and Western support wavers, the conflict appears to be reaching a decisive moment. Economic turmoil, military setbacks, and shifting alliances all point to an uncertain future. Scott Ritter has repeatedly emphasized that wars are won through strategy and endurance, not empty rhetoric. With Russia advancing and Ukraine struggling to hold the line, the endgame is approaching.